So unlike Photoshop, Krita is targeted for painting. When you first load it up, you'll get a screen like this. I'm just going to say new file, and I'm just going to say create. And look what we have here by default. I've got my tools, I've got a color picker, I've got brushes down below, and I've got my layers. So Krita is tuned into the requirements of a painter a little more succinctly than Photoshop, maybe. Which kind of makes sense when you think about it. Krita was, after all, designed to be a Photoshop-adjacent program, specifically targeted for painters. And they're pretty shameless about it. It even really looks like Photoshop. And I want to remind you here that Krita is free, which is a massive point in its favor. Okay, so much like Photoshop, I can go up to Window Workspace, and let's see what Big Paint 2 does. It gives me a few more windows. By the way, up here is what Photoshop called the Navigator. Here it's called Overview. I think I'm going to revert back to the Big Paint option, which is my personal favorite workspace in Krita. Again, like Photoshop, you can undock these windows by clicking here and just moving this out. Krita defaults to a color wheel style of color picker. There are some nice features of this window that we'll look at in a later chapter. Again, I want to stay focused on overall interface stuff for now. These windows can be resized by, clicking here, dragging this up. You can see the areas where it's possible to drag. It's these dotted icons right there. You just click and drag it accordingly. You can do other cool customization things, like I can take this toolbar, drag it out here, or I could bring it up here and then start resizing it like this. And you can do that with any window. Here, I'll grab the brushes and bring them up here. And now I've docked it so that my brushes are here and my toolbox is there. Again, being able to save screen space is valuable if you only have one monitor. Although this does go against my overall philosophy. I want things to be as few clicks away as possible, and now they're like an extra click away because they're docked. So I probably would opt to drag this out and have it as its own window. Of course, now I have to resize it, which I can do over here. And you can redock anything by simply dragging it down to where you want it, and there you go. I'm just going to reset my entire interface though to Big Paint, with the only modification being to undock the color picker. I'm going to right click here, and this is where I can turn off windows. I don't need this specific color selector, so that's gone. And that leaves me maximum room for my layers and my brushes. And because I'm a bit of a Photoshop junkie, I'm just going to swap the location of these. So my brushes are here, layers are there, and there we go. And now that I'm happy with this, just like with Photoshop, I can go to Window, Workspace, New Workspace. Again, I'll call it My Workspace, hit OK, and now this is saved. And just a quick note on the color picker. You can click on this little box here, and then click on this arrow here, and you have different layouts. If I wanted something close to Photoshop, it's probably that one there, then hit OK, and there you go. But in this case, I find the hue strip very narrow. It's a little difficult to pick the hues that I want. So I'm actually going to go back in here and use the color wheel mixed with the color box. This to me is a happy medium between the Photoshop style picker and the Krita style picker. But of course, use whatever you feel most comfortable with. This is just what I'm used to. A really cool feature of Krita's interface is the right click button, which I like to map to the back rocker switch of my stylus. It brings up this hovering mini interface. I've got my color picker here in the middle, which kind of rotates to point the most saturated portion of the triangle at whatever color I'm on. That's kind of interesting. This little circle at the top allows me to rotate my entire canvas, and there's a ghostly circle that stays there to allow me to reposition it back at 0. And of course, I could just pick brushes and start painting with them. Change my color, pick a brush, paint. With this floating hub here, you could potentially eliminate your brush window here and open up more room, because also this button right here accesses the same brush window as this. Also, this floating hub has different lists. If I click this right here, Krita comes preloaded with some categories. Here's the paint category. So these are all paint brushes. For example, this one here is like a smudgy rake brush. We're going to cover brushes in a different section, but you get the idea. There are different brushes to choose from. You also have a favorites folder. So let me go over to the brush tab on the right. Let's say I happen to really love this textury airbrush right there. I could right click on it, say assign to tag, and say my favorites, and boom, that airbrush just showed up right there. And now I have access to it. So again, that's right click, and also you can right click to exit that menu, or you can right click, make an adjustment, pick a new brush, and that will exit out, or you can right click, select your color, and just click out, and there you go. And because your colors are also adjustable right here, maybe you don't even want this on screen. So without the color picker on screen, and if I just drag that out and close it off without that on screen, I'm really airing out the interface here, which I think is always a good thing when you can do that but still have quick access to your tools. Oh, one last thing about this floating hub, if you click this button, it hides everything, just like the F key in Photoshop did. And I can press spacebar and move my view around in the same way. So I could like zoom in real large and manipulate my painting this close to the screen. And then of course right-clicking here, just clicking that again brings back everything. Alright, so that is Krita's interface in a nutshell. Let's move on now to Procreate.